Welcome back to Elevate Your Business, a podcast where we discuss proven, transformative approaches to business growth and exit strategies. Join us as we talk to successful entrepreneurs, share new and profitable ideas, and help you grow wiser and wealthier so you can experience limitless success in both life and business. Now, here's your host, Adam Koch, business transition consultant and founder of Elevate and Exit at elevateandexit.com.
All right, everybody. So here we have Andy Fruechtnicht, CEO, president, founder of Single Source IT in Columbus, Ohio. Andy has been my IT company, full disclosure here, for probably about 10 years now that I think about it. Is that about right? And they do an amazing job. I think that there's no shortage of jokes that go back and forth about the fact that we're an all Mac office. And I know that everybody there loves that we're an all Apple office. And that comes with a big, thick, chewy, sarcastic phrase. But in all seriousness, they're very, very good at what they do. I've never had even the slightest inkling to change companies. And while we're not going to be talking about IT services today or you know how to fix your computer or your server, you can talk to Andy and his team about that another time. This is going to be another How I Built It episode. So I started this whole series probably a year and a half ago at this point, because I always had this goal someday of writing a book where I would go out to different entrepreneurs, business owners, and just understand their story and learn, you know, what was their childhood like? When did they decide that, or think that maybe someday they were going to start their own company? To kind of find, you know, are there common characteristics out there? And then when you start your company, you know, I think so many times people look at business owners and they think, oh, this is easy, you know, must be easy being your own boss. That's one of my favorite comments. And I always say, well, I have 350 bosses. They're called clients. But the reason I do this is partially selfish. I love hearing other entrepreneurs' stories. And the other reason is because as far as I know, there are very, very few books, let alone podcasts, movies, documentaries that really document and share the stories of owners from how they got started to all the tough times, the stressful times, the great times, and how to become successful. So thank you so much for being willing to share your story. I know we've been talking about doing this for about a year now.
You're welcome, and thanks for having me on here.
For sure. All right, well, let's just jump into it because I've got more questions than we have time to answer. Where'd you grow up? What was childhood like for you? Let's start simple.
So growing up, I was born in New York, in Yonkers, and lived kind of a lot of different places. Moved around quite a bit when I was younger. Elementary school, ended up moving to Ohio, and kind of settled in Ohio with family, and ended up graduating from Worthington.
What had you moving around a lot? Who in the family? Was it a job, like dad's job, mom's job?
It was jobs. It was mostly stepdad jobs. So I think if I remember correctly, I think I moved from like first grade to 12th grade. I think I moved like 12th.
Wow. What did he do
during that period? I don't exactly remember. I just remember we moved on.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah. That's a lot of moving.
So and so I think it was, like I said, fourth grade, we moved to Ohio. He ended up getting a job at OSU.
Okay.
But yeah, we ended up still moving around a lot.
Yeah. Was there anything you experienced early in life that, when you look back, initially kind of ignited your entrepreneurial fire and kind of burning desire to succeed?
Funny enough, I think it was when I got into computers, and just really kind of like the idea of invoices and expenses.
It's funny looking back, isn't it? It's like, wait, why in the world did I like that?
Yeah, and actually, I remember using Microsoft Money 2.0 on a 3.5-inch uppy for my checkbook, and I just really enjoyed that stuff.
What was your first job you ever had?
I mean, outside of like paperwork or paper route,
Yeah.
uh, it was um, it was funny. I graduated high school, and it was like that first day or after high school. I was like, oh, I need to go do something. Um, so I just went to McDonald's and like walked in and got a job and had that for months while I was looking for other jobs.
What was next? What did you what are the jobs you had after that?
Oh my gosh. I worked for a catering company as a cook, worked at an automotive salvage yard.
Hmm.
I did telemarketing, worked for a short time at a restaurant cooking, eventually became a personal bank Huntington uh, in their
Oh,
call
no way.
center, and then ended up in working tech support for entry level tech support for a software company.
Okay. We'll come back there in a second, but I think it's
Mhm.
funny. How many people have you talked to, other business owners that always say that their first job was a paper route?
Um, yeah, probably quite a few.
Mine was. And man, I love that paper route. That $26 every 2 weeks was amazing.
Oh, see, back when I had to do it, they made you pay for the papers, and then you were responsible for collect.
Even better.
So that was well, no, that was rough. So if you were going to go do something, run out and knock on a couple doors for people who owed me money, and just to get enough money to go do something with it.
Yeah. That but yeah, I wonder what the, when our kids are in their 40s, what job they're going to say they had when they started. It's probably, I don't know what it's going to be. I don't want to be cynical here, but I don't know what that job would be. I mean, there's not much kids can do these days when they're really young.
Yeah, mine are already out of the house, so
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting though. Well, here's a funny
yeah.
one. Have you ever been fired?
Um,
You're
I
thinking
don't
long and
think.
hard about that.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, uh, never. I never. Well, it's because it's been so long ago, Adam.
Yeah.
Um,
Thought you just plead the fifth or something, you know?
yeah, no, I've never been fired from a job.
What about a favorite? Did you have any favorite job growing up before you kind of got into what you were doing now?
Um, no, it was all work.
All work, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the big question, and I think I already kind of heard it, which is why I wanted to rewind for a second. But
Mhm.
how did you end up in the industry and in the IT industry? What ultimately prompted you to start your business?
So, yeah, I was actually working at Huntington. My brother actually got into IT, and I was really interested in it. And I was already working with computers, um, prior to that, just on a personal level. Um, One of my coworkers ended up getting a job doing sort of support uh, at at a company, and so I was kind of recruited that way.
Okay. And so did you work for an IT company first?
Yeah, so it's actually a software development company,
Okay.
but we did. I started out there level one tech support. Um, Eventually, I was basically managing three departments. Um,
Wow.
so it was a tech support, data conversions, and some implementations. Um, and eventually ended up getting into sales for a short period.
Okay. I can kind of see why that all trained you to essentially run a company because it sounds like you were wearing four hats.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
How'd
It
you
was definitely a
how'd you
lot.
decide on the name of the business? So single source IT. I think I can kind of read between the lines, but you tell me.
Yeah, I mean it just seemed kind of when it hit me, I think it was just the all encompassing, anything related to IT, so that you don't have to contact multiple vendors, that we can handle it all.
And was it like a big process where, you and your wife sat down and really kind of like banged out a bunch of names on spreadsheets and went back and forth and had a retreat at remote location, or was it like one day you woke up in the shower and you're like, I got it, single source?
No, I mean it was definitely a process. I worked with I had a handful of friends who actually went over names and logos and that kind of stuff. And that's interesting to look back and
Oh
see
man.
how dated the first go around was, and um, to compare it to where we are now.
Yeah, I love looking back at the old logos, and every once in a while looking through the server, you'll come across like an old document and you'll read it and think, what in the world was, and I was a terrible writer. What was I thinking,
Yeah, I've stumbled across and it's what's really funny is I've always held up to that stuff because I'm like, oh well, I built it once and now I don't have to reinvent the wheel, but there's nothing close to what I would do now. So,
Right. Oh no, no,
just
you'll never use it again,
playing.
but it's still fun to have for nostalgic reasons,
Yeah,
if nothing else.
yeah, for sure.
So when you started initially, when you started the company, did you just cut bait and
Mhm.
go all in, or did you have kind of a day job first for a while working and building the new company?
Yeah, so I think at the time I was in my oh so yeah, when I was with the software company, um, really kind of what preempted was me leaving was a lot of changes in management due to corporate politics.
Okay.
Um, so I was actually pulled out of sales, put back to be an engineer, um, and that kind of got me looking, outside. What was interesting is that at the time, I didn't think that starting a business was an option. So I started sending out resumes, and I sent out a lot of resumes and didn't get any hits. This was in 2003, 2004.
Hmm.
And I was talking to my wife, and she was the one, I mentioned starting a business to her. And she was the one who encouraged me. Um,
That's great.
I didn't think it was an option because of like health insurance, and we had 2 kids at the time, and you know, so yeah, so I started basically just moonlighting. I had one client that I had gotten and was doing evenings and weekends, and um, I had the business plan in place. I think I had an exit date scheduled, and I ended up having to move it up like 30 days because um, the amount of work was
Got too
just,
busy too fast.
too busy, too fast, and trying to figure out systems and,
Oh, geez.
create the
Yeah.
systems and create. So you're trying to, you're, 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 you're learning how to start a business, right? The
Yep.
interaction with the client, how are you going to do the billing and how are you going to track, these things that you didn't even think of until you start doing. So,
I was just talking to another podcast guest actually earlier today, Dr. Jonathan Bakhtari. He says, and we were talking about the LinkedIn quote, the guy, the CEO of
mhm.
LinkedIn, how he said that building a business is like jumping off a cliff and building a plane on the way down.
I hadn't
And
heard that, but that's pretty good.
well, when I heard it the first time, my reaction was the same as yours. But it's not only hilarious, but it's funny because it's so true. I mean,
Yeah.
you do it and you just don't know what you don't know, and there's so much you don't know. I mean,
Yep.
it's not. What's funny is you don't. It's not that you. There's nothing you really don't know, or very little you don't know about what you do. What you're doing
Hmm.
for the client. It's everything else. The things the clients don't see. Yeah. How talk about how difficult or easy it was to get started in the beginning when you first started.
I mean, it was just there's a huge learning curve, and you I'm sure this is you start in a direction, and uh, one of the lessons I remember trying to procure hardware. You know, I built a quote off of some price I found on the web. I didn't have a lot of experience with companies and whatever, and so you build a quote, and it looks like a really great price because it's like 50% of everybody else. So you build a quote, and then you find out you can't get that part at that price, or um, gosh, there's so much um, yeah. I think, I mean, it was just, it was just the process of learning the things you didn't know, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, um, yeah, it's just a lot of experiences like that where you make a decision and then learn from it.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I guess, I mean, it still happens to this day, just not nearly as much.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you're always learning. Things change. You're kind
Yeah,
of forced to. But I've got this big thing on our fridge here at the office that says there are no mistakes, only lessons, and I think that's pretty true.
that is very true.
What about startup costs? I mean, was that an issue when you started, or?
Right before starting the business, um, my wife and I, as a household, we tried to trim everything back as much as we possibly could. And at the time, I think we figured out we could live on like 40,000 a year. So we took a second mortgage against our house for 40,000,
Wow.
and it was kind of like it's either going to work or not. If in a
Right.
year it's not working and we have to go get a job, but if it works, great. So
Yeah. Well, kudos to Joe Beth because I I mean, I can imagine, and maybe this is a question I should start asking people, is, how supportive was your spouse? Even though it's probably a question nobody wants to answer, right? Because this is going to go on air. Your spouse is going to watch it.
right.
But I mean, I can imagine that most spouses, especially when you have kids, I don't want to say that they wouldn't be supportive. I mean, think deep down inside they want to be supportive, but I imagine it's probably really, really tough to think, okay, Andy's going to quit his job now, and that guaranteed money that comes in every 2 weeks, that's just going to go away, and then we're going to rely on him to find people to pay him to use his knowledge in IT, and hope we make enough to, make what he was making before, and we hope they pay. I mean, that would be pretty tough to support.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, and like I said, she was the one who encouraged it because I didn't even think it was an option.
Well,
It was definitely a
again,
passion of mine, but
yeah. Well, high five to Joe Beth because that's awesome. I didn't know that. What about hours? How many hours were you putting in each week in the very beginning?
a lot. Actually, I do. Um,
I think is the answer all of them. You were putting in all of the hours?
it's all of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of
Or
so
as my
that's
CPA would say, six. That's it. The answer is six.
I'd love to get that point. Um,
That's not true, by the way, but yeah.
yeah. uh, so starting, actually, so when I was in corporate, I was working a lot of hours. I mean, like there were 2 years where I was, doing tech support there that I would work, from 9 to 6, 7, 8, 9 at night.
But 10, 11
And
hour or 10, 12 hour days
yep.
working for somebody
And,
else. Yeah.
yeah. And I kind of missed, the first 2 years of my oldest daughter's life,
Oh, wow.
just for the number of hours I was putting in. Um, so Joe encouraged me to, you know, make a change there. That's how I ended up into going into the sales role.
Okay.
Um, so I ended up in the sales role, basically with commission, doubled my salary, and ended up cutting down to like working 5 hours a week. So
Wow.
it was a great gig. Um,
Yeah.
but then, like I said, that came to an end. I was put back to being an engineer, despite having like 109% quota my first year in.
Oof.
Um, so, you know, yeah, so that's kind of how things evolved. I mean, there at no point did I know exactly what direction I was headed in.
Yeah. And how old did you say your kids were when you started the business?
So the business started in '04. So my kids went in 2 and 4.
2 and 4. Okay. Real
Yeah.
young. Tough
Yep.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I keep wanting to give more high fives to Joe Beth. That's wild. Yeah. How long
Oh,
did it? Sorry.
yeah,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, she took, yeah, I mean, she took a lot of responsibility on, with the kids.
Oh, I bet. I can't even imagine. What about
Yeah.
profitability? There's the rules of thumb that are out there on how many years it takes to become profitable. How long did you feel like it took before you felt like you were profitable enough to not stress about money or do that thing that so many business owners do, especially early on, where you put more hours in at night because you think it's going to make you more money when really it doesn't do anything. It just makes you feel better. Um, how long did it take before you felt profitable?
So that's really interesting. I think I want to say my first year was at my most profitable.
Your first year.
Um, yeah, my
Wow.
first year was probably my most profitable, and it's interesting because I didn't have any overhead. Right, I started the business in my house.
Yeah.
I had one guy who helped me out on stuff, who was on 1099, and I think we had a part-time quote unquote office manager, but um, yeah, we didn't, and again, this is, you don't know what you don't know. That first year we didn't have health insurance.
Mm,
So I wasn't paying for
scary.
insurance. Uh, you had product you resold, you had a margin on it. But I didn't have the infrastructure that I have now.
Hmm.
So now you think about the expenses and everything else. But so that first year, that year was actually one of the better ones. Once we moved out into office space and started hiring people and started bringing expensive, um, I think it went a few years without really making a significant amount of money. But cash flow was there, so it worked out.
Would you say it's been fun growing? Like going from, being just you, a part-time office manager and a 1099, tech support person to kind of hitting that ceiling where you had to make the decision like, am I going to go bigger from here? Understanding it's going to cost more for overhead, you're going to add more of these things. Like what went through your mind during those times? I mean, were you kind of excited about it or were you thinking, oh man, this is just kind of something that comes along with the deal?
Yeah, so actually, for me, it wasn't even a conscious decision. Like I just thought it's the nature of business. Like
Okay.
you build
Yeah.
it and it grows. And so, um, yeah, I never thought, oh, I'm just going to keep it like this.
Okay.
Just a few people. Yeah,
I think that's just how entrepreneurs are wired. But I've been asked a couple times in my career. I've been doing this for 22 and a half years now. But well, the first time stumped me. I didn't know what to say, but now I'm prepared. But the question is, and it's like such a, it's, it's, it's kind of like, I think you kind of said earlier what I've always said about my career. Now, granted, I started my business way before I had kids, which made it a whole lot easier on my conscience. But for me, it wasn't. I always say it wasn't that cliche. Failure wasn't an option. Like it wasn't like that. I didn't even think about it. It was like I didn't even think about what would happen if I failed, or I didn't have anybody say, "Well, what happens if you fail?" And I say, "Failure is not an option," and stick my chest out. I never thought about it honestly, so kind of like the answer to that question, even more abstract for me is when somebody says, "Well, why don't you just stop growing then?" And it's almost like it's a tough question to answer. And what would you say? Well, what would be your answer?
um, that is actually a really tough question. I, I guess again, I don't think about it. Don't think
Hmm.
about um, not during now. There are times like right now where we'll opt not to bring on new clients.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you've got what,
you know,
3 positions open right now, or you just hired one, you got two open?
yeah, we have one we just filled. We have two more open.
This just turned into a
Um,
recruiting podcast, by the way. This is now a hiring
yeah.
podcast.
So yeah, and obviously that's also as finding the right people for the right seats.
Yep.
But
Tough.
I know I I don't even know how to answer that. I
It's
might
all
have
right.
to come back to that
No, you're all
one.
right. I'm going to go off the cuff here. Do you love what you do? Is it work?
Um, I absolutely love what I do. At times, I don't like the speed in which I have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You
Would you
know,
say that
having to,
that when things speed up, would you say that those are typically during times when you're shifting, you're putting the clutch in because you have to put it into a new gear?
um,
Like right now, it seems like you are at a point where it's like Jim Collins, good to great. You know, you grow, then you plateau, and you have to shift higher. Then you start growing again, then you have to shift again, and it just kind of keeps happening over time. Um, as long as you keep growing, that is.
yeah, maybe. I mean, I think, you know, we also have, you know, our workflow ends up being cyclical at times. So,
Hmm,
you know, they're just, whether it's the economy or client requests, there are times where it's busier and times that it's slower. So some of that is driven by demand.
got it.
Um, you know, so do I love what I do? Absolutely. There are times where you almost feel rushed, you know, where you're rushing through thing to the next thing, which, you know, that can take the joy away from it.
Sure. I think it's probably not fun all the time, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is I would assume, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I would assume that you have a lot of pride for what you do, the company that you know that you think you do a good job, probably better than most. Would that be
Mhm.
safe to say?
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm thinking that the answer to that weird question, why do you keep growing, is probably has something to do with having pride in what we do, thinking we do a really good job, wanting to help people genuinely. And it's not so much about money. It's more about the joy of um I can imagine, like, you know, you hear these stories about, it doesn't happen as much these days, but you hear these stories about, you know, grandparents and great grandparents that had 12 kids, and then they have kids, and they just enjoy seeing all the kids and grandkids and great grandkids play together because they built that, you know, they created that. And I think that has something to do with it. I don't know.
No, I actually, and as soon as you said it, I was like, oh yeah, that click. Like it
Yeah.
is the helping people.
Hmm.
Like when, you know, they're like, oh, we're paying this much and this isn't working and that's not right. And you're looking at it going, oh yeah, we've seen this before and we can do, you
Yeah.
know, that's no, there's a lot of satisfaction in that.
What about, you know, speaking of family, obviously, I mean, running a business and having a family is difficult. I did not know
Mhm.
that you started this company right when your kids were 4 and 2, which definitely puts a different lens on the whole startup experience. I mean, I know from firsthand experience that it wasn't when I started, but as I got older and the business grew, it became more and more difficult because you feel like you're, at least the way I feel a lot of time, is I feel like I my staff needs me, but I'm not doing a good enough job. And then I feel like I'm not there fast enough, soon enough, or enough period for my clients. And that I feel like I'm not doing that good enough. And then I'm not home enough to be a good enough husband. And then I'm not with the kids enough. It feels like I'm never doing good enough. How would you describe your experience, struggles, successes, you know, as a husband, dad, business owner, employer, and so on?
You know, I will say that early on in starting the business, the starting the business and running the business have definitely put in on our marriage, and I definitely didn't spend enough, you know, time um, early on. I just, you know, it kind of wasn't. You just feel like it's not an option to you know, because you're trying to bring in the income to support the family, which, you know, you feel like you're in a catch 22. But um, no, I'd say it's a very similar thing. You never feel like there's enough hours in the day.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. When you look back over the years, what would you say have been the best parts of starting, growing, and running your business today?
I obviously, you know, being in a point now where we are able to, where I am able to, you know, provide stability and financial income for my family and for our household. That's been great. The customer client relationships that I've gained over the years has been uh, nothing short of amazing. Um, and just I really like our client base, and the people that we work with. And then there's the some flexibility um, to being able to at least prioritize certain things schedule wise, with work, whether it's the kids' activities or those kind of things. So that you know you could get to the basketball games because my daughter was cheerleading, or go to a play, or those kind of things.
Yeah, just getting out, breaking away.
Yeah, yeah.
So here's the opposite question. What would you say have been the toughest times when you look back? Do you have any memories of times where you're like, oh man, that was just a really rough time? And then, what happened? How'd you get through it?
I don't have anything that I would really put a finger on
Really?
specifically.
That's good.
Um, yeah, I don't have anything that really is a big item. Uh, I think the thing is just having the endurance to put in the hours.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest struggle.
What about what would you say, I guess, is the I don't want to say you don't like it necessarily, so change the word if you want, but what would you say is the thing or things that you most dislike about running the company? What are the hardest parts or biggest challenges you face in running the business today?
Um, I think it's always kind of been the case, but it's good time management.
Time
Um,
management. Okay.
it's trying to find the most efficient way things can be done. Because obviously that's the one resource that's finite.
Yeah.
Um, so managing the time that you have, making sure that you're putting your focus in the right spot, and that includes putting focus, on your family, or on your marriage, or on which part of the business. And then the question comes up is, are you focused on the client issue, or are you focused on, are you working for the company, or are you working on the company, right? Because you want to work on the company so it becomes better, so that you can provide a better customer experience, so that you can do your work, in the best way possible. Um, but then there's also responding to clients and their requests, and then also, I guess, especially with IT, is staying ahead of that curve, to make sure that we're utilizing and leveraging new technology as it comes in.
Yeah. Or like when a OS update comes out and it crashes two of your computers at once. I got to be the guinea pig in that situation, but then you can go and send out a notice to all your clients to make sure they don't make the same mistake.
Yeah,
Hence staying ahead, right? Um,
yeah.
the best we can do. But yeah, I was just going to say, you're also in a business. I always joke that every once in a while somebody will ask me, hey, you're going to, on vacation or whatever. Like, what do you do about, you know, trades you need to place and investments you need to make changes to? I'm just like, well, I work on vacation. It's not really a complicated answer, that I'm usually awake before everybody else is awake usually. And, if I check everything once a day, but so you're also in a business, maybe even more so than me. At least I have to deal with market hours between 9:30 and 4 every day, and that's about it.
Mhm.
Whereas you're in a business where people might reach out to you at 11 o'clock at night with an urgent matter, and it might be Sunday afternoon in the middle of
Yes.
watching your favorite team play, and yeah, and you've got to get to work, or at least somebody on your team does.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, we have an on-call rotation, but for the most part, clients typically will reach out to me. I actually had that experiences 2 nights ago, where I got a text message at 11:30 and worked on an issue for a client, for like 45 minutes or an hour.
Yeah,
And that's not. I mean, that's just part of. Now, granted, it doesn't happen a lot. Um, as far as clients reaching out to me is probably 3 or 4 times a month, after hours. Um, and then, like I said, we have an on-call rotation. So there is always somebody on call 24/7, 365. We know if there's an issue, who the person is, responsible, who's going to respond. And we've had to go out and swap out phone systems on a weekend, or um, deal with a compromised account or something of that nature.
Well, and I'm sure the whole rotation, on-call rotation, is something that you had to learn at some point as well. A process, a
Yeah,
system.
yeah. I mean, it's pretty simple, but it was definitely the difference of, the clients just having all my cell number and then going, oh, well, maybe this weekend I'd rather not be the guy, you know.
Right. This
So,
is a big question to unpack here, but what would you attribute the success you've achieved thus far? So when you think about how well things have gone, from the beginning to where it's at now, what do you think were the things or personality attributes or choices you made that really kind of got you to where you are?
um, a lot of it, honestly, is it's opportunities that presented themselves to me, to the company, that we just happen to be in a position that we could capitalize on those opportunities. Um, Obviously, as relationships matter. Um, you know, Relationships with other business owners, with people in the industry, those types of things. But uh, yeah, a lot of the growth, again, that we experienced were things that we were just in a position to take advantage of an opportunity.
Right place, right time kind of thing?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, change gears here for a second. Are you much of a reader? Do you like to read at all?
I do like to read. I don't read nearly as much as I'd like to.
How do you consume information? I mean, are you kind of a podcast listener? Are you a book listener?
Oh,
Articles?
ye- so most of the time it's going to be articles of things
Mhm.
online, and that's usually driven by a scenario that um, I need to learn about or figure out, or I have a challenge in front of me, so I'm going to research it, figure out how, if it's yeah, name the topic, if it's something business related, something technical. I'm definitely research and read online.
Do you have a book, or a couple books or resources that you've used in your career that you can go back to and put your finger on saying that was my favorite business book, or this is the one resource that I thought was just really, really helpful for me, or not so much?
No, I mean, I did buy a lot of books about starting. I think one of them was like starting a computer repair business, which is so funny, looking back at that. And I mean, you gain little nuggets of knowledge out of everything that you can, but no, there wasn't anything in particular that really that stood out.
Do you feel like you've gotten to a point in the business here at this point where you're truly acting as president, and not necessarily dealing with as much of the day to day?
Oh, absolutely not.
No, that's funny. Yeah,
Yeah, no,
that's tough.
it's not- it is extremely tough. Yeah, and I mean, that's why we have the open positions. Right now it's filling the gap, and um, I think I feel like I'm close-ish to getting there.
Heavy on the
Uh,
ish.
yeah, yeah, heavy-ish. But yeah, hopefully I can get to that point where I focus on working on the business.
How many hours do you say you put in today per week?
Um, lately it's for the last 3 months. It's been a lot.
Put a number on it.
Oh, uh,
Give or take 5 hours, just to make it easy.
yeah, 50 C, easy 50,
Yep.
probably pushing 60.
Okay. Now, do you ever, I mean, aside from obviously getting your head wrapped around the business, so you're running it and it's not running you, that's always, like I said, we both know that's one of the toughest parts is,
Hmm.
time management, and it seems like there's always something new that somehow springs itself onto your plate too, that you didn't originally anticipate that, and all of a sudden those hours you had time blocked. I need more hours now.
Yeah.
But do you ever think about any specific business goals that you have? For instance, like, where do you see the company 5 years from now, or maybe just tell me what in general what you see your business going in the future in general.
I mean, I'm hoping that we just get to maintain the growth that we've had, and continue to add people and resources, and get the right people in the right seats to where um, the day to day becomes the day to day, as opposed to react to like that one request that came in, even though you had set it aside to do X, Y, and Z, you know. So and again, it, goes by that shifting from being reactionary to to being able to get ahead of things.
I
Um,
gotcha. I see what you mean now
being
by
pro
getting ahead. Yeah.
yeah being proactive in in um client communication, and projects, and strategizing with clients of what the next step is for them, and what that looks like, and where their focus should be in relation to technology, and you know
Yeah. Looking back, do you feel like you've met or exceeded even the level of success that you initially hoped for when you look back at 2004 when you first started the company?
oh, absolutely. I don't think I I didn't think I'd be where I am now.
No.
um no.
And you probably don't think enough about that, I bet, to really kind of enjoy it. Most entrepreneurs don't.
Ye- Yeah, there's too many other things to think about.
Sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think, and I probably speak for you as well. I don't sit and ponder a whole lot. There's usually something already consuming my attention.
I'll be honest. For me, it happens probably once a quarter and it's always when I'm in the office by myself on a Saturday or Sunday and it's quiet, like this time of year, all the thermostats are set to eco, so it's like 64 degrees. Um, and I'm just walking around the halls and I'm looking at pictures and things like that. And just every once in a while I do stop to kind of like, check my own pulse and say, look where things have been, where they've come, and kind of how exciting that is. Because I don't I don't personally believe, and I think probably most business owners and entrepreneurs don't really believe in the whole idea of reward yourself for milestones and successes. I think most owners feel like the hitting the goal is the reward, and
Mhm.
I don't need to go buy myself dinner or something like that. Um, but that's, I don't know, that's the excitement for me anyway. I think that it's just that I guess that's what I call the entrepreneurial spirit, is that kind of burning desire to succeed, that undying um, energy, for lack of a better word, to just kind of continue growing just because you have pride in what you do and you think you do a good job and you want to save
Mhm.
people, help people, and so on. So, for those who are looking to start a business, what advice would you give them if they were to ask for the single biggest contributor, or you can do two if you want, if you can't think of one, that helped you succeed over the years?
This is going to be interesting. One of the things that I kind of wish I had done was I feel like I jumped in trying to start up a legitimate business, you know, um, right off the bat, and try and do everything, cross every T, dot every I. And especially when I was like union, um, I think I could have gone a lot longer just as a 1099,
Uh,
without creating a lot of complexity and structure, and, all of that stuff that goes with it. Um, I think that's something I would have done differently. As far as the rest of it, yeah, you can go with a lot of the cliches of, do what you say you're going to do, follow up, maintain contact, even if it's not good news. I think those are the things that, those are the biggest things, I think, regardless of what industry you're in, is just, staying in touch with clients, and giving them information and communicate, with them.
yeah. Out of curiosity, what
Mhm.
was it that what do you think it was way back then that made you want to speed things up and get things moving along to maybe make it more of a bigger official business when it didn't need to be? What do you think the driving mental space was that made you want to do that?
I just felt like if it was the difference between a hobby and a business.
Mm.
Um, you know, probably more on my side what anybody else saw or thought. Um, I wanted to present a company that had more resources than just me, even when the company only had me as a resource.
Yeah.
I think that was the biggest driving factor.
So like credibility,
Yeah. Yep.
appearance almost. Yeah. All right.
Correct.
Well,
And
sorry, go ahead.
oh yeah, I was going to say, and that's the other thing is, easier to pitch yourself when you have, the company and the company already has clients, as opposed to trying to sell yourself that first time.
Yeah. One of my favorite relationships is with my first ever client that I literally met going door to door. And it's just, we just love talking about it that, it was a 20, what are we, 20, yeah, about 22 years ago, 23 years ago. And I always joke about 80 pounds ago. And well, I got one more question for you.
Okay.
For those who are already running a business, maybe they've experienced success already, they're doing well, maybe,
Mhm.
but maybe they've hit a point where they're stuck, they're plateaued. Maybe they're in the middle of that gear shift we were just talking about, which I've never described it that way. What advice would you give them to get unstuck that's worked for you in the past?
So probably not the answer you're looking for, but one of the biggest pivotal moments in our business was bringing on a fractional CFO,
Okay.
um, and that's been I mean, that's probably one of the largest single factors that really changed the trajectory of the business. Because he's able to, number one, he brings a lot of business experience, and he, has experience in a lot of different industries and a lot of, so he was able to take the financial data, and now leverage it to uh, to really increase our growth a lot faster than what we had done in the past, and give us the confidence to do that. Um, that's probably one of the biggest things I would say for our company.
I love that answer because nobody's ever said it before, first of all. And second of all, I think that fractional CFOs have been around for a while.
Mhm.
Fractional COOs have not. That's kind of a new concept.
Yeah.
Now we're talking systems, processes, systemization, and so on, which I think almost every company does need. Some are better than others at it. But what I love about that answer is that I think many times owners don't really know what the fractional CFO does. I think sometimes they worry that they're going to spend money and not get something back for it. I think sometimes they worry that they're going to come in and be told what to do because they're the owner and they don't want to be told what to do. What would you say to all that?
I mean, number one, as far as our CFO is concerned, and if I'm allowed, I'd even plug the
You
company.
can say whatever
Um,
you want. Yeah.
so yeah, so our CFO, we work with Focus CFO, um, is literally paid for himself multiple times over,
What's his name?
in Sharif Matar.
Okay. Got to plug him,
Um, yeah.
Focus CFO is a
I
big company. Got to give Sharif some props.
Yeah. So, I mean, he deals with negotiating rates with banks, and making sure that our CPA is on task. And um, I mean, yeah, he looks at so many different things. I mean, as far as the business is still mine. So, though, as far as purchase decisions or whatever, yeah, we'll have a conversation of it. Um, the biggest thing is he shows you how to plan for it, as opposed to just making the decision to do something, um, and justify expenses for if an investment's going to be here. what's the offsetting income, or what's the opportunity look like? It's been really good. That's been very instrumental.
No, that's awesome. Well, thank you. We've got almost an hour here, it looks like, and I think so that's about our time. But thank you so much for being willing to share your story. This is going to be locked on the interwebs forever.
Great.
So so thanks. I really love all the answers you shared, and to get some insights into how you did what you did. And for those people that are out there that are looking for a second opinion on their own businesses, IT services. Whether it's you're looking for somebody on retainer, somebody to do project work, for-profit companies, nonprofits, government work. I know that Andy does all of these things with his team. Their website is singlesource-it.com. Again, that's singlesource-it.com. Other contact information will be in the podcast notes below on YouTube, as well as on iTunes and Spotify. But other than that, if anything you want to share just to kind of close us out?
No, you know what? I appreciate kind of I don't do it enough is to stop and think about, where the companies come from, and, how it's grown. So thanks for that.
No, I mean, I hope you enjoyed sharing the story as much as I enjoyed hearing it. But anyway. Well, as I always say, that there's thousands and thousands of podcasts out there, and you chose to give hours a listen today. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. To complete our free business valuation quiz or to set up an introduction call, just head over to elevateandexit.com. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, financial, tax, or as a basis for investment decisions. Always consult a professional business transition planning consultant or a certified exit planning advisor before implementing any of the ideas shared in this episode.